Hello, my name is Nathan Dennis, and I am here for the Empowered Health Conversation on behalf of the Black Health Exchange. Today, we're going to talk about Black men's health, mental health, prostate, diabetes, well-being, the conversations that we don't have. And I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Mr. James Lindsay, and we're just gonna have a conversation. So join us on this conversation. Empowered Health, coming at you right now. James, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this, man.
You're welcome.
So a few months ago, we was on a walk. We went to the Wrekin. That walk was so hard for me. I was struggling. Like, don't judge me. Like, my health is not the best, but we're making progress. And when we was walking, we was having a conversation about men's health. And I was telling you about a conversation I had with my dad at a conference, just talking about how my dad had been back and forth to the GP. It felt like for me over a year period, but I think I was saying to you how even now on the walk, I don't actually know the specifics of why he was going to the GP. And I remember you kind of like responded like, wow, that's, you said it to me, and it like, wow, that sounds like the conversation I've had with my dad. And it's interesting because I've connected with Michael, who's kind of like one of the visionaries with this project. And he's got a massive ambition to try and engage with Black men around health and stuff like that. And I think through this journey, it's made me realize that we as men, Black men, don't really talk about our health. We talk about everything. We can talk about family, money, for those who are sports, football, but we don't really talk about like what's happening for us on a health perspective. That's physically and mentally. Can you remember that conversation on the walk?
Yeah.
What comes to mind as you're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think just surprised how like common it was, sort of similar to the stories that I had in my head and similar stories that I'd had with my mom. I think for me, obviously, slightly different, but the same. So my family background, obviously my dad's Jamaican, mom's English. So I say that because I always felt like, dad was he's the father figure in the home. So I was always very aware of like my cultural background and this sort of stigma around just general sort of, what does it mean to be a man? Is it okay to be sick? And a lot of that's made an impression on me in a positive way, which we'll get onto. But I think it was just really quite empowering that the conversation that we ended up having with the rest of the men on the hill, on the mountain, whatever it was, just opened up that actually we all kind of got this in common. And I think we're all of a similar age as well, weren't we? So guys who were on the walk. So I think it was interesting to talk about the generation, our dads essentially. And I guess that's how we've ended up having this conversation.
So I was born with a condition called tetralogy of a Fallon.
Wow.
Yes. So the GPs in the room will probably know what that is. But basically, I was born with a hole in my heart and a heart murmur. So from very young, about age 2, I was on life support machine. I had to have open heart surgery, and then probably 13 years ago, had to have repeat open heart surgery to have my pulmonary valve replaced. So if you remember back on the walk, I was always at the back.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
You should have told us that at the start of the walk.
No, you know what it is? I don't like to make excuses. I don't like to get the sympathy vote. I make people know that, my health is not where it needs to be. But yeah, I don't want to be like the sympathy thing. But at the same time, it could be part of this man thing. Like, yo, I don't want to tell man that, yeah, I've got So it could be two things. It could be my pride, my ego. But I thought I'll give you that because, yeah, for me, that walk and doing things like that is different for me. And it's something that I'm trying to, as I'm getting older, I'm conscious of my health. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
And I've always admired with you and just when we've had conversations, because you was like an athlete in it when you was younger. Yeah. So tell me about that, like you, younger James, and all the stuff that your dad and yourself got into.
Yeah, so it was a big part of my childhood. So my dad was an athlete. first and foremost. So that's a really important context, because I think he's very competitive. We all are as a family, but equally fitness and just like an attitude of you got to do it anyway. You know, I was raised that, you know, life can be tough. Things are out of your control majority of the time. So my dad used to talk about, you know, it's quite common to as a phrase now, but control the controllables. So he would say, you can control whether you're on time, you can control how you look, you can control whether you go to work. These are all things that was ingrained in me from an early age. Because ultimately, as athletes, it was, if I didn't want to go to the track, no one was forcing me to go. I wasn't in a team. I did play football, but, you know, I stopped playing football to concentrate on my athletics. So we was just ingrained that, you know, you turn up anyway. But that was all from him. And that was a way we all sort of managed mental health, and I know we'll probably get onto that at some point, but fitness and all of that that comes with it was a big part of how we all kept well. And I think I just took that from my dad.
Mental health. Have you dealt with that?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if I've dealt with mental health. I think I have, but I think I was more conscious of it. And what's interesting being on this project journey with the Empowered Health journey is we've been speaking to people in the dementia department, and I was sharing with colleagues in that space within the NHS that I actually felt angry for quite a few years, because when my grandma developed dementia, I felt like I had no information. We didn't really talk about it as a family. And I felt like when my grandma became ill with dementia, it was like things happened that no one prepared me for. Is that making sense? And I think in a short space of time for me, when I think I started to have mental health, is my grandma passed away, and within this, well, my nan passed away on the Tuesday, and then on this of the same week, my grandma passed away on the Saturday. And I think mentally that rocked me. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
But it was a bit crazy because within my family, I'm kind of seen as one of the strong ones. So I don't feel like I grieved for ages. I was just like trying to help there, be there for my mom, be there for my dad. But recently, speaking to the dementia department, I feel like I'm quite passionate to try and help.
Yeah.
Because the pain that I experienced, I never forget it. When I walked into my grandma's room, and I'm talking about as a grandchild, I was definitely top 2 grandchildren in terms of visiting. I was on it. And I walked into her bedroom and she was like, "What is your name, son?" I said, "Huh? What's my name?" Like, I remember just looking away and just going in the corner and just crying. I was just like, whoa, what is this? And I felt so ill-prepared. And then when they both passed, in terms of just low moods and just in the funk of things, it was my wife that one day just looked at me and said, "Nathan, I don't think you're right. I think you should try therapy," which I did. But it's not something that I would go out and say, "Oh, I've had mental health," or "I've dealt with depression," and stuff like that. How in your family or in your life have you kind of dealt with mental health from your perspective?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I say I've dealt with mental health because I've worked in, you know, my background. I've worked in sort of public services and stuff like that. So I'm now familiar with terminology. But I'm aware that that's only because I've been in rooms where this type of terminology is talked about. And even in the conversation with my dad, you know, things like depression and anxiety and things that are now common language, that was never a word. Or so even when I say I think I dealt with mental health, it's only because I'm almost applying it retrospectively. I'm saying, okay, well, that sounds like anxiety. So I'll give you an example. The reason why I think that is because I felt like I got to the top of the mountain almost in my personal life. So I've been married for 17 years, awesome. 4 children between us. Kids are all doing well. So this is going back a while now, sort of 7 years. successful in my job, nice house, nice car, but just this emptiness, just not being able to feel this kind of like, I thought I would feel different by now. Nothing had changed. I was still training and all that type of stuff, but just that sort of just like, it's almost like a cloud. That's the only way I could describe it. And yeah, I've probably learned since then that that's probably a form of depression.
Would you, if you don't mind me sharing, you don't have to share this.
Yeah.
But obviously we was doing one-to-ones for a while at the Jamaica Blue. Was it Jamaica Blue?
Yeah, coffees, yeah.
And I remember
good coffee there.
Yeah, and I remember you would talk to me about, and I'll be saying, but James, you've just sold a house. You've just done this, and like you just, for whatever reason, you was in a place where you couldn't see the positives.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I know where that is.
Go on.
Because it goes back to the sport, actually. Because when you're in a sport, and I work with young people in sport now, so I see this a lot. When you're in an individual sport where margins are everything, you know, a tenth of a second is a big deal in 100 meters. So me saying to you, oh, I was the fastest in Birmingham at a time, or fastest in such and such an area, means nothing really, because I was always going, but I've got to be faster because there's always somebody ahead of me. And that was the same with life. So I think it come from that. I think it was that kind of, almost like what makes you strong is your biggest weakness.
In terms of present day, we have an amazing opportunity, I think, with the Empowered Health Project. Yeah. To try and reach black men, to really encourage them to get early screenings. I think one of the biggest challenges is, not the biggest, but we know the statistics are hard. Like health inequalities is impacting the African and Caribbean community massively. I don't even know if you've heard of, have you heard of the train? Yeah. So like if we're, basically I think it's like, if we're in Lazarus and we catch a train to Solihull, you, depending on your postcode, you can extend, I think, by 10 years.
That's right, yeah.
So if you're living in Lazarus, based on the environment, you're likely to live 10 years shorter than if you was living in leafy Solihull. Yeah. What do you think about that, man? When I first heard that, it blew my head. I was thinking, whoa.
So again, I only know that because I've been in those rooms that I told you about. So I've been in those public health rooms, but yeah, the vast majority of the community wouldn't know that. And I think there's just so much to unpack when you think about how easy is it to move those 10 miles, for example. So I've moved.
Could you always talk about social mobility with me?
Big time.
And that's what's connected to it.
It is, because ultimately that's not going to change unless, some of it's opportunity, I think. Some of it is, there are just greener areas with less cars on the road, you know what I mean, where you're naturally going to be healthier. But then also, obviously, there's more like density of different ethnic groups and stuff who have a higher like propensity to suffer from the things that we're talking about. So I think it's all well and good saying it, but then it's kind of, well, what? So what? Like, how you gonna change it? My family's from Handsworth. I've always lived in Handsworth. What do you expect me to do? So I think some of it is like expressing that, but then giving people solutions. Yeah.
This word social mobility that we've touched on.
Yeah.
You want to break it down? Because I think you have a great way of saying it.
Yeah. So it's a term that it's used in a lot of sort of government spaces, like when you look at like a move, but basically it's the movement of a people. But the social mobility part is typically a positive move. So in other words, I'm in this environment, I'm in this situation, and I'm going to move over here because of all of the different things we talked about earlier, like better health outcomes, better employment prospects. So a good example of social mobility, what I always use because it's famous, is Stormzy paying for black girls and boys to go to Cambridge.
Love it.
Because Cambridge had an issue with not having enough black students. Love it. So he forced social mobility by being proactive in that way. But for me, like, social mobility is a lot more local than that, as in you can go and move to wherever you want in the UK. You know, whether people do that is a different story, but it doesn't mean that you can't. And by doing so, you could improve your health outcomes just by living in a greener place.
I love that. How do you use the postcode? My postcodes in terms of my grandparents.
Yeah.
Is B6 Aston, B21 Handsworth for my grandma.
Yeah.
And the families, those kind of, they call it Northwest Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
How do we reach that community? Because one of the things that I find interesting is that when I'm gathering with my community now, it's mainly at 9 nights and funerals.
Yeah.
And it's even a frustration I know of my dad's. And it's like everyone's drinking, everyone's smoking.
Yeah.
You're going to a funeral and sometimes people are scared to kind of like talk about what they actually died about. So sometimes you're kind of guessing how's the person actually died, and you feel a way to go. It's not appropriate in our funeral. It's like, how did it die, by the way? It's not really appropriate. But how do we empower that part of our community, especially the men, to kind of say, get your prostate checked. Do you know if you've got diabetes? You know, go and see your GP, just get your general obs done, like blood pressure and stuff like that. How do you think we can like get there and get the message to them?
So I think there's two things. I think the first thing I would say, and I had a conversation with my dad in preparation for today, yesterday.
How did that go? I know I sent you some questions.
You did. It was really interesting, and I think he enjoyed doing it. Enjoyed being asked. So I think point number one is do more of this. Do more of interviewing the generation who won't be with us for much longer.
Give me two things that like pop.
There's two things that. So my dad said, I was like, questions like why would you go to work if you thought you were sick? And I didn't even think about this, but he was saying that back in the day, so when he first started to work, sick pay wasn't a thing. So if you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid.
Simple as that.
So even when they introduced sick pay, the mentality is already there. I'm already ingrained in me that I can't be off sick, because even if I did get sick pay, to be labelled as a sick note, as my dad called it, is worse because you're working in environments. So in my dad's case, a very sort of, he was an engineer, so very working class, predominantly white management, all white management. So to be labelled anything other than hardworking and reliable is an issue.
That's nuts.
So I think that's point number one. I think point number two, and I think this is a wider thing as well about, I believe this anyway, about almost like parenting, and like I've learned a lot as I've got older. I think the art of it is taking from our parents what is good and what we want to take passed down and leave the rest behind, because otherwise it's just a perpetual cycle where you're just passing down the same behavior. So the stuff, for example, I'm really, really proud of my dad, and I'm really glad he was the way that he was with me. But then there's other stuff where I'm like, I'm not going to be like that with my son and my daughter. So I think from a health point of view, it's almost having the conversations with the elders, figuring out why they didn't feel comfortable. And then, you know what, it's like, it's just removing the stigma. It's having uncomfortable conversations.
I like that. So removing the stigma.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a story. But I had this interesting experience where, through a job I was doing with a charity called Bringing Hope, a young man had committed suicide, and I was part of what we call the pastoral care team. So it was our responsibility, or my responsibility, to go and visit the family at what they called a 9 night. So in the African and Caribbean community, on the 9th night of a person passing away, the whole community come together and gather and bring food. If they're religious, they'll pray together and they'll drink and just be together in unity. So I've gone to this house with a few cases of drink and patties, and this house is heaving. It's in Handsworth. And it felt like there was 100 people in the house crying over this black young man who had took his life by hanging, allegedly, because it happened in prison.
Okay.
And I remember being in the house and seeing everyone crying and thinking, what happened to this man whereby he couldn't feel all this love that's clearly in this room for him, the way he took his own life. And I remember the same week, another young man had committed suicide, and it was impacting me. I was like, why are men, especially black men, just killing themselves? And I took some time out, and because of my own faith, for the weekend, I just started to pray, and I said, God, what's happening to men? Like, I need to help them. I need to help men. And I heard very audible, Nathan, start to engage men on their silent screams. And I said, silent screams. So I wrote it down, and I started this whole project called the Silent Screams Program. And I kept on praying, and I kept on hearing instructions to start the space based on talking about all the things you don't talk about. You need to break all the stigma about mental health, about depression, about how you feel as a man when you don't have any finances, and just create a forum with men and order some food and just talk. And the project absolutely exploded because men were just coming and just talking about their silent screams. So for me, I had to break the stigma, because the thing that I realized is that when I'm vulnerable in a space, it empowers other men to be vulnerable. So that's why I'm so candid, even on this podcast, talking about my grandparents, because I know people will relate. And so 9 nights and stuff like that, it is important in our community, but I feel I get frustrated that we gather so intensively when someone's passed away, but we don't come together to celebrate life. And what's interesting is actually on the 27th of June, at the Holford Drive Sports Hub, we're going to do a big event called the Celebration of Life event, where we're just going to try and galvanize the whole community to come together for one purpose, to celebrate life. But at the event, there's going to be like store holders, exhibitors, and if we can, inspired by Tribe Media, we're going to actually live on the event give people their flowers while they can smell them, because we feel that too many people get flowers once they're in the grave or once they've died, but we need to give people like their appreciation now while they can smell the flowers. So the Empowered Health program has big ambitions, but it's going to take the whole community. So I'm hoping that anyone that sees this hears the heart behind what we're trying to do and helps us take it to the whole of the West Midlands. What would be some of your messages that you would like to leave with men, our brothers that are out there in the community? Because the harsh reality, we're not going to be here forever. I went to a play recently called Small Island at the Rep. And it gave me an insight to how hard it was for Caribbean people to come to England and how they just had to be hardcore. So I think the reason why we don't talk is that we've just inherited this kind of like, just get on with it. You know what I'm trying to say? Thick-skinned, we've got to keep it moving. And I think that kind of has trickled down. But I think for our generation and for our children, we've got to break the cycle. That's why we're doing this, innit? Like having a conversation. So what would be some of your kind of like key thoughts and messages?
I think exactly that. I think we're not of that generation anymore. We don't have those same like challenges. We do have rights at work. We do have sickness benefits. So what's wrong with, speaking to your HR department if, you need to go to an appointment? You know what I mean? Like try and overcome some of those generational things that maybe were true back in those days, but aren't true anymore. I think, thinking about your kids, because, I think, we've had this conversation about, dads almost accepting, you made the point about finding out what was wrong with somebody after they died, or not even. My dad mentioned that yesterday about you only found out when men had died what was actually wrong with him, and that he was living with cancer or a hole in his heart or whatever, because he never spoke about it. So I think that, as I say, that generation's sort of going or has gone. So I think understanding some of that stuff from them, but then for our generation, just leading the way. And I think for me, it's like when you hear the stats of, that white men are more likely to have the prostate checked or, you know, go to the doctors. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself.
Have you had your prostate checked?
Yeah.
Yeah, the proper one?
Yeah.
Wow. How was the experience?
Not nice. I'm not going to lie.
I've done the blood test.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. But do you know what? For me,
I don't know if I want someone around that region.
No, and neither did I. But, you know, the symptoms were severe enough at a young age where I had to weigh it up.
You know, we can pick, because
I didn't know about a blood test, by the way.
Yeah,
so I only found out about the blood test when we was on the mountain.
Can you actually, because I don't know what it is, but I don't want a man around there, but I don't want a female.
Yeah.
Depending how the female looks. Only joking. Only joking. But yeah, I need to do that part as well.
I selected a
female.
Woman. Yeah.
Why do you think why do you think we say that? Is that because of like just how we've been raised and socialized about this man thing?
Yeah. There's that. There's a pride obviously within it. It's vulnerable, you know. But it's just like I said. It's a balance of, if this is the difference between potentially saving my life or my pride. Yeah. You know, then there was no contest.
I think you got to look at the big picture, innit?
And then that goes back to the social mobility stuff again of saying, well, okay, if we know that stuff is right, we know that you're less likely to live 10 years longer if you live in a certain place, then probably going to have to try harder to improve your health. Because if you can't improve your environment, you've got to work with what you've got, right? So go for a walk or stop smoking or you know.
I didn't even realize that walking was good. I know this sounds silly.
Yeah.
But lockdown taught me about walking.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Then you're going through the lows during lockdown, especially when it was the second one when it was more winter.
Yeah.
But I discovered a place called Sutton Park.
You didn't know about Sutton Park?
I could not believe this place is humongous. I couldn't you can't. I've been there so many times and I don't think I've walked it. But like just being around nature is so therapeutic. It's unbelievable.
I think so. I agree with you, and I think we all fell back into like the rat race again when COVID finished and forgot about spending time with family and walking and that type of stuff when we all just had to do it. But it was the same with the gym. Like for me, I didn't realize how important the gym was to my mental health. In fact, that's probably the occasion where I was well aware that I was struggling. I was going downhill fast because from when they closed the gyms, that was the trigger for me.
You just felt it deep.
I don't want. I'll leave it there.
So I'm going to ask you. I'll do it first. Is to 3 things you'd like to, if you're talking direct to the camera and someone's listening to this, especially a black male, what would you say? So I'm going to try it now, and then you can just jump on after. I would just say, to any black men in general, obviously we're targeting black men, but please, I love the whole of humanity. I would say don't wait until it's too late to get help and support, to get checked. Your life is valuable. We want to see you here for as long as possible. My second thing would be is have conversations within your household, within your families. You know, brothers with brothers, nephews with uncles, sons with fathers. And if you're lucky enough to have your grandparents with you, have the conversation about health, about getting checks and how they feel. And my last request was anything that you see pertaining to the Empowered Health program, just please share it. Like, go on the website, come to the events. There's a lot of stuff coming.
For me, I would say prioritize your health over your pride.
That's good.
I would say that make sure that you're prioritizing your mental health as well. I'm a big advocate for therapy, but not in the probably conventional way. There's stuff like walking therapies now. I went through therapy once and I struggled with this because the face-to-face is uncomfortable because I wasn't very good at talking about my feelings, which again comes from, I think, my childhood, because we don't talk about feelings in the household. Whereas going for a walk with somebody, is completely different because I haven't got to sit face to face with them. So think about that, whether there's a different way of accessing therapy.
I love that.
And also encouraging more Black men particularly to get into that field. My wife is a therapist, and she tells me that, you know, there's a huge shortage of men in general, but almost next to no Black men involved in
Wow.
it just seems like Black men get involved when it's
Crisis.
severe mental health,
Yeah.
like psychosis and almost like what do you call that, mental illness rather than mental health. And yeah, I just think like just keep having these conversations, man. I think it's like
Awesome.
I think it's important that we break down these barriers that might have been, as I said, real barriers for our aunts, for our elders, but they aren't necessarily barriers for us. We're living in like 2026.
Wow. Thank you, James. I just want to say thank you so much. Like,
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
This conversation has been amazing, and I hope it's the first of many. I feel like you're the first, and then people will see this and like, yo, let me get involved, because there's so much different men from different walks of life I'd love to hear from as well.
I think that's really important. I think that's probably a fourth point was, you know, my story is unique to me, you know, but let's encourage more people to get online and tell their stories, because it's important.
Excellent.
I'm Michael Brown, Director of Black Health Exchange, and we are one of the creators of the Empowered Health Programme, a programme funded through the Fairer Futures programme. And tonight's conversation on conversations is just so important, because conversations is where change begins. And we need to be able to stimulate and encourage conversation. And I think in doing that, a few things. First of all, socialization, which we spoke about. There are so many times that conversations can begin just by people socializing. We don't have to set up specific events for them, but just by people socializing, they can exchange experiences and they can learn from one another. That's one thing. The second thing is that we do have a fantastic array of expertise within our community, and we do need to look at how we can bring that expertise in front of people who are yet to go down the pathways that they have been down. And I know from my own personal experience that attending mental health groups and listening and learning from guys who had been down prostate cancer route was certainly helpful to me when I got my diagnosis for prostate cancer. So that would be my second thing. And the third point is speak to medical professionals when you can. And I know that that's not often, because generally it's when you're in a surgery with them, but attend events, make a beeline for people from the medical professions. So if you're out at health promotion events which are taking place in the community, engage them, have conversations with them, ask questions, put your perspective to them, but engage with them, learn, educate yourself, empower yourself.
Hi, I am Kay and I'm a GP at Midlands Medical Partnership, and I am one of the partners in the Empowered Health project. Today's conversation was really powerful. I really enjoyed listening and felt inspired actually by what I heard. I think three things that I would take away. The first is the power of conversation, and the power of conversation between generations as well. Actually, the elders have a lot of wisdom, and it would be great if they were able to impart that wisdom on the next generation down. But it sounds like sometimes that needs quite a bit of encouragement. So how do we do that? The second thing is also the power of the next generation, and how actually by being more open and having open conversations in social situations and with family, how that can and is going to start making a difference for the next generation. From my own perspective as a health professional, taking away is one about when men come to see me in clinic is being curious. Be curious, be open, start to have some conversations about what they might not actually be coming to see me about, And when those conversations start, when I've actually got someone in the room, actually start to try and engage them in thinking about their healthcare there and then. And then the last thing is about how can I take myself to them? How can I deliver healthcare in an environment that feels safe and secure and is appropriate for that person? So taking our health professionals into the communities, and that's something that we're hoping to do through the Empowered Health Project.